Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Sneakered Life. I am Piper Harris. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to give you tips, tools, and tricks to add to your life, to create a life that drives, empowers, excites, and motivates you. I want you to have success. So today we're going to jump into our topic. I've been kind of putting some teasers out there on imposter syndrome, But first, one little caveat. I have about 5 trees, about 40 feet tall, being cut down right now. So hopefully there's no screams and squeals from me because a tree went through my house. So just if you hear chainsaws or you see me scream and run off, well, I have a tree on my inside of my house, not the outside of my house. So again, thank you so much for joining me today for Sneakered Life. So we're talking about the imposter syndrome. Yesterday I posted a picture, and I'll post it again in the comments. And the picture is something that I had done years and years ago when I was in the midst of my chefing career. And so I had these fun pinup pictures done, and I remember being in the midst of this time. I was with my best friend at the time. They did my makeup, they did all these things, and I was dressing up, and I felt like a fraud. I felt like, it's pictures, right? So you plaster on a face, it's pretend, but it's supposed to be fun. But I remember in that moment feeling like a complete fraud, because you have to understand, I'm a self-taught chef. I didn't go to culinary school. I'm an Italian girl that loves food. That's basically how it is. And unfortunately, I have the craft. I have the gift to be able to put food together. But it was very difficult for me to embrace myself as a chef, because the industry didn't embrace me as a chef, because I didn't, have the time in culinary school. And when I did this photo shoot, I had not worked in a restaurant. And so I just remember struggling with feeling like a fraud and a fake. And I remember thinking to myself, do I want to post these pictures? Like, I felt really good about myself. It was after I had lost weight. And I just kept questioning, do I want to share these pictures? Because what if people find out? What if they find out I'm not a real chef? So, it's interesting. Everybody, I think, struggles with imposter syndrome, or what they call imposter phenomenon. And so really what that is, it's a fear of being found out. It's a fear of phoniness. It's a fear of inadequacy. And actually over 70% of Americans struggle with this. So let me ask you, do you struggle with that thought process, that feeling like you're a fraud or you're going to be found out? So I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. And if you're joining me today, go ahead and type your responses below. Ask yourself, number one, do you work and rework assignments and projects just over and over and over again, trying to find perfection? Do you? Here's your second question. Do you have these amazing ideas, but you hold them tightly to yourself? You don't share them? Number three, do you tend to research something to the point where you're paralyzed by all the different answers of information that you found? So how about this one? Do you feel like everyone else around you is better than you or more successful than you? Do you get caught in that comparison trap or the judgment trap? Or do you routinely walk away from social situations and question if you should have even been present? Should I have spoken up? What did I say? What were they thinking? Are you constantly, questioning yourself? So if you answered yes to any of those, you are in the midst of listening to your inner critic, the imposter. And that's with a capital I. In the past, I've worked with clients and I've had them actually name their inner critic. Because here's the thing with imposter syndrome. I know it feels real. But the thing is, it is based in emotion. But so then it kind of feels like this nebulous thing that we're fighting against. So I have my clients name their inner critic. I've even named mine. She steals my momentum all the time. She tells me I'm a total fraud. I'm never going to make it. Don't let people find out. And her favorite thing to whisper in my ear is, Penny, for your thoughts. So by naming her, however, It feels like more real, how I can fight against her and how I can beat her. So this imposter and your inner critic are constantly whispering self-doubt, fear, shame, and perfectionism in your ears. So, well, what would you name your inner critic? What would her or his name be? Most people that struggle with this phenomenon, this imposter syndrome phenomenon, the fear of being found out, the fear of inadequacy, most people that struggle with this really place a high level of achievement on themselves. And they're routinely told they're perfectionists or they're those type A'ers. I've heard that a lot. Some other common links when it comes to imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon is that you have fear of failure or fear of the unknown. You have shame over past successes, and you just have this need to do the best at all times. So I'm going to share 3 tips today on how you can block out the imposter, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the week with our Lesson 10 talks. So number 1 tip is you've got to recognize it's real, but it's real and it's based in emotion. So rather than retreat in fear, recognize your imposter's voice and begin to define what it's saying. Is it fact or is it fiction? So by doing this, what I want you to do is break down your goals or your projects in small achievable steps. Rather than looking at that enormous picture, that has to be absolutely perfect, I want you to give yourself a moment to define what you're seeing, define what you're feeling, and then work those small achievable steps. Because here's the thing, each step is forward momentum. Each step is an achievement. You don't have to have the very top to feel like you've done something, that you've achieved something, that you have worth. These small achievable steps give you a win with every single step. And it really does take that burden of perfectionism off your shoulders. Now, beware. When you're in this situation, the imposter loves to whisper, "It's not good enough." Remember, that whisper, it's fiction. Fact or fiction. Make sure, number 1, make sure that you define what's going on. Define if it's fact or fiction. If it's based on an emotional response, not based on those achievable steps, you're listening to fiction, and it's time to listen to fact. So number 2, and tell me if you've been in this situation. The imposter loves to place shame and guilt on your success or accolades, okay? So let me ask you this. Do you ever say things like, "Oh, it was just luck. It was just the team," or "Oh, I only got there because"? So qualifying statements are clear indicators of a shame or guilt and lack of confidence. So the imposter loves to make you feel bad for your strengths. And what's wrong with your strengths? But something in us, that imposter doesn't want us to feel that. So to overcome this, what I want you to do is I want you to recall a defining moment, one where you're absolutely confident and you were the head of the spear when it comes to an achievement. Whether that's knocking out a job interview, being the head of a huge project, getting your kids to go potty. I mean, define a defining moment where you felt like, "Oh, I did this, and I did this on my own." So I want you to recall that defining moment. Remember that moment. And this is going to bring you back to what you accomplished rather than wallowing in that weird feeling of shame for taking credit. This is fact. Recall the moment, recall the facts. Confidence can be exercised when we relish what we've attained. There's no guilt and shame in giving and working our best, is there? I mean, why do we work so hard if not to have pride in that work? So listen, be on the lookout. The imposter, when you're working through this step and you're defining those moments and just really relishing how it felt, that imposter is going to whisper in your ear, "You are arrogant and you are boastful." This is fiction. This is fiction. So, third, you're not perfect. None of us are perfect this side of the veil, no matter how hard we try. Too many times, and too many of us, we're absolutely paralyzed by the need for perfection. But we have to learn to believe or to work on a continuum of good, better, and best. By defining our own personal continuum of achievement, this allows for redemption, and it also allows for a positive forward momentum. This gives you facts. Does that make sense? Good, better, best, rather than perfect failure. Do you see the difference? Working on a continuum and defining that continuum is going to keep you on a positive path. The imposter wants nothing more than for you to get wrapped up and beat up with just this fraudulent feeling and just to hide and retreat in fear. But by recognizing, hey, there's a continuum of achievement that I'm working on. Good, better, best. Is it good? Okay, I can do better. Is it better? I can do best. It's a continuum, and it allows always for forward momentum. Now, when you're developing this new script in your head to, fight the imposter, you really have to accentuate the positive. Focus on the positive and be on the lookout. When you're working on this, the imposter is going to whisper, "That's what losers do. It has to be perfect." That is fiction. So when we're fighting this imposter syndrome, when we feel like a fraud and a failure, and oh my gosh, are these people going to find out? You really have to recognize that, it's okay to be proud of who you are. You don't have to have everything absolutely perfect. And yes, there is fear of the unknown and fear of failure, but it doesn't need to stymie your progress. It doesn't need to make you retreat into a ball and hide away from social interactions or sharing your ideas or any of those things. So remember, the 3 tips for you to block the imposter. Number 1, recognize it's real, but that it's based in emotion. Why don't you name your inner critic, the imposter? Why don't you name this? It gives you just this tangible feeling and something that you can fight. I want you to break down goals and projects in small, achievable steps rather than looking at this giant picture and having to be perfect. Each step is forward momentum, and each step is a positive achievement. And beware, the imposter is going to say it's not good enough. Now, number two, remember, the imposter is going to try to place shame and guilt on you for you feeling proud of what you're accomplishing or for accepting accolades. Listen, there's nothing wrong with you being proud of what you've accomplished. I want you to recall defining moments where you were the head of the spear in achievement. Recall those moments so that you're bringing yourself back to what you achieved, not to what the imposter is whispering in your ear as a fiction. I want you to focus on that. Confidence is exercised when we relish what we've attained and acknowledge what we've completed, what we've accomplished. Now remember, when you do this, when you accept accolades, when you have pride, the imposter is absolutely going to whisper in your ear that you're being boastful and arrogant. That's fiction. And lastly, you're not perfect. You're just not. Perfection is going to lead to paralysis. So develop a new script. Do life, do your projects on a continuum of achievement. Good, better, best. Step away from perfection and failure. There's nothing in between. So listen, some of our deepest fears are rooted in worth, and the imposter uses it as an advantage. By exercising fact and fiction, by defining what's taking place, you're going to be given the upper hand in quelling that voice. Remember, you've got to be fair. Weigh the evidence. Don't discount your achievements. Embrace your weaknesses and recognize your unique abilities and strengths. And if all else fails, create and deploy the imposter's counterpart. I like to call him the master, or her, the master. The master is the one that whispers words of kindness, strength, drive. It praises your effort, and it encourages you through failure. The master whispers, you are worthy, you are great. So who are you going to listen to? The imposter who's screaming that you're a fake and a fraud and everybody's going to find out? Or the master who's telling you you're doing great, you're doing your continuum, you're focusing on the positive, keep moving forward. So like I said, we're going to be discussing a lot more about imposter syndrome and how we're faced with it on daily situations with our less than 10 this week. I hope that you've enjoyed today's talk. Something for you to think about. Utilize these 3 tips to overcome the inner critic that's whispering in your ear. The imposter doesn't have to take over. Inch him out. Get rid of the imposter. So thank you so much for joining me today for Sneakered Life Coaching Talk. I am Piper Harris. I hope that I have given you something to utilize and put into place into your own life. If you have any questions regarding coaching for individuals or organizations, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me a message at piper@piperharris.net or go ahead and check out my website, piperharris.net. Thanks everybody for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you more about this imposter syndrome that we're all battling. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.